Minister, I want to thank you and your staff and your advisors and the Department for producing this Housing for All strategy. And I want to acknowledge the collaborative approach that we had in forming this document. And it's a long-term plan and incorporates many green objectives that started off as discussions with you and your advisors, and we improved those ideas, and now we see them in a strategy, and also we've seen them in legislation. And I refer to cost rental. That's been the core of our Green Party housing policy for a long, long time. And we met our Green colleagues in Vienna to look at their world-class cost rental model, and I don't think anybody in this House could argue with the cost rental model at all. We've introduced it into Irish legislation for the first time, and I expect the numbers will increase over time as the LDA scales up and as we attract investors into that space with those limited returns that would suit those ethical long-term investors or pension funds. And I do expect that number to scale up, because when the LDA came into our committee, they said cost rental would be a focus of their work, and I would believe that they will deliver on that. Minister, you described it earlier on. I listened to your open speech. Cost rental has been a game changer, and it's exactly how I described it to people on doorsteps during the last general election, and I'm proud that we're legislating for this and we are delivering for this in this government. Urban regeneration and addressing the vacancy and dereliction that exist in many of our streets is a core part of this plan, and that's extremely important. There are thousands of opportunities out there to take an existing building, to renovate it, to refurbish it, and to rejuvenate it, and to bring life and living back into the towns and above the shops, or instead of a shop in limited cases. Putting the life, the heart back into those towns. There needs to be supports in place to do that. To assist those people who want to take a derelict or a vacant or an empty building, because it is difficult. It's difficult to get the loans in certain circumstances. It's awkward to build in town centres. You've got traffic management issues, you've got live streets, you've got neighbours, it's all that kind of difficulty. And often it's so much better to just go greenfield development, and I can see the attraction in that. But those buildings that we have in our town centres, I firmly believe that the greenest building that's out there is one that's already built, that you can invest in, that you can adapt, that you can repurpose it, you can change its use, upgrade it to live in it. What that does, when you put that life and living and vibrancy back into a town centre, it generates an economic return to that town, but it also generates a societal return to that town and rebuilds that community. And it's hard to put that into tangible economics, but what that can generate for a town. So it's an incredibly important part of Housing for All strategy. The target of 33,000 homes to produce annually, it's grounded in research. It's grounded in that ESRI analysis on population growth, on persons per dwelling, demographic changes, etc. And it's a realistic figure. It's challenging, but it's deliverable over the course of this strategy. And I listen to the opposition, who are highly critical of this figure. And they come out and they say it should be higher, it should be quicker, it should be this, it should be that. If we'd have said 40,000, they'd have said 50,000. They don't deal in facts or details. They're good at heckling, Ceann Comhairle. They're really good at heckling, but even their heckling doesn't stand up to scrutiny. You don't have to deal in detail and facts. You deal in sound bites and populism and headlines and criticism. And none of that's ever produced a house. And none of you have ever produced a house. The target we need to produce, it's large. It's a big figure. It is doable. It also creates another problem, though, Minister. It's a lot of carbon emissions in these two. Concrete, if these should be all new builds, which I don't believe they will be, but concrete production is a huge emitter. And I firmly believe that if we take those buildings, that existing stock that's out there, that derelict stock, that vacant stock, that stock that's going into obsolescence, and we really provide the resources for people there to refurbish them, I think that's going to be a game changer as well. We need to ensure that those 2 and 3 stories over shops out there, those hundreds of kilometres of commercial streets out there with 2 or 3 stories above them that nobody's living in, and that brings life and vibrancy back into a town. After 5 o'clock, when the shutters come down, there's still life and there's still light on the streets, and that's really important for our local communities as well, for a safe sense of security as well. We need to match that town centre living with commensurate investment in the public realm, in the creation of those nice public amenity places with good wide footpaths, safe walking routes to schools, all that matching infrastructure that has to go with living in a town centre. And we can do a lot of that through the town and village renewals or the URDF and the RRDF funding. But that's for the bigger projects. But where we've got those smaller projects, we need to ensure that our local authorities are well enough resourced and have the capacity to carry out the audits in our town centres to see where do we need those small interventions and those small bits of work that would make living in those over the shops or in that town centre attractive for residents and draw people into it. And carrying out the health checks and audits for our towns are a vital part of deciding where and how we should direct public funds to generate the best return for the economic and societal benefits and to create towns that are attractive to live in. It all takes resources at local level as well as national level. Our local authority resources and staff are under pressure all the time, and the extra demands such as the CPO scheme, which are welcome, and I do think they are an important thing to give the local authorities that better powers to go out and CPO vacant and derelict buildings and to regenerate them back into society. But we need to resource them to do that work. And auditing our towns and identifying sites where there's no impediment to develop and liaising with owners to encourage them or to show them how they can change of use of these properties. Even trying to find the owners can be difficult in certain circumstances. And it's not always available, that time and the luxury of doing that to staff who are already under pressure. There's going to be challenges in the upskilling of the construction sector for apprentices, for professional services to meet the new build and the refurbishments, the repurposing, and also the retrofitting of half a million of our existing housing stock, and that's another challenge as well. But it's going to create thousands of jobs, and it's going to create thousands of long-term, well-paid professional jobs and trade jobs, and I'm encouraged by the work that's been done by Minister Harris and others on that to encourage the uptake of apprenticeships. So I'll just conclude by saying that this plan is costed, it's realistic, it's deliverable, and it's funded, and it will provide certainty for people who want to buy, to build or to rent at affordable costs. It commits to ending homelessness. It's the largest ever state intervention and public building programme ever. It's state-led, it's plan-led. It will take time to get there, but the route is clear, the legislation has been passed, and more is underway to ensure that we deliver on housing, which is the most immediate critical issue we face in this country. Thank you, Minister.